Testing.
Oh, yeah, we're promoting hydration.
We'll talk.
Don't want to make you busier than you are. Chris, hey, how's it going? Going well. You all right?
How's your? Yeah. When you walk off and like it's like messes up your. It did. I had like so many of those. I was not gonna fuck up. Like, it hurts your. It like messes with your chest. And it did.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, December 6th agenda session. I will take a motion on the minutes.
Second.
Minutes have been motioned. They have a second. They will stand without objection. We apologize for starting a few minutes late. Strategic planning did run over. We had a lot to talk about this afternoon. And if you would, council, look over our agenda session packet this afternoon. We have a first reading. Madam Clerk, should that say final reading on ordinance A?
Final reading, yes, sir.
There's that. I told you my new glasses are working. Okay, that actually should be final reading under item A and also under items legal, B, C, D, and E, F, G under Mr. Nobbit. Those are all final reads, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure that is noted for the record. These are not first readings. These are final readings. So council, if you would take a look at under council office, legal, public works, I will watch the board for your light if you have any questions on items under final reading. And I do want to say, Dr. Lambert, thank you for your email on the community health item. That helped me tremendously understand the role of the assistant. So thank you very much. So council, I'm just give you a few moments to look over the agenda. Okay. Seeing no lights, I will ask for you to take a look at our purchases this evening. I believe we have 6 items. Miss Vicky, are you in the room? 6 items. We have no emergency purchases, no RFPs, and no sole source to report this evening. Is that correct? Getting a thumbs up from Julia. Thank you very much. Any questions on our purchases? And those of you following along at home for the first time, our purchases are sent to us last week. We have an opportunity to ask the administration for questions. And then at this opportunity, again at 3:30. Council, I'm seeing no lights on purchases. If you would take a look at our December 13th proposed agenda. Madam Vice Chair, I do see your light. If you'd like to take the floor.
Yes, under planning, item O, that's 2022, case number 2022-0240. For that one, I would like to have it removed from the agenda if possible, as there's some issues that have come up with that one. I know it's going to be in planning and zoning in our committee today, and I would like to see a presentation on that one. But if it can be removed from the agenda until we address some of the concerns that have come up.
Understood. And we will hear that in planning and zoning this afternoon. I think
L.
it's item L.
It's L in your
Hmm.
on the sheet here, but it's O on this sheet. I don't know.
It's L on our agenda.
L on the agenda. Okay.
You
Okay.
said it was case 0240.
240. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's O in our today's packet. And L on-
Yes. O in today's on the 2-week
Okay.
agenda is O, and in our packets in the agenda
Okay.
is L. Yeah.
We
I'm
will
sorry.
cover that in planning and zoning this afternoon.
Yes.
Okay.
But I
Very
would
good.
like it removed from the agenda current
Okay.
at the moment.
Very good. And I also have an item that is very complex and it has several issues unresolved. Item F in my district that I will be addressing in planning and zoning as well. That I do not feel is ready to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Dr. Burrs, I see you have your light is on. You have the floor, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I think mine is the same request on next week agenda. It is item N.
Item N.
It's K today. And it still is not ready.
Give me that case number, Dr. Burrs, please.
It is 2022-0199.
0219.
And Mr. Chair, I don't know your preference here. So they're reworking their proposal. Is it better to remove it from the agenda till they're ready?
If it's not ready to go forward.
Well,
I
we
would-
can
talk
defer
about this in
forever,
committee.
but-
Let's save this for committee.
All right, I was talking more about your agenda, but that's
Mhm.
fine.
And if we have something in committee that we're not ready, we can say it at that time and allow the opportunity for the city attorney to direct.
That's great. Thank you,
Action
sir.
on that. Thank you very much. All right, seeing no other lights. December 13th, our proposed agenda, future considerations. If you would, please take a look at future considerations and let me know if you have any questions or comments. I am seeing no lights for future considerations. I do know we have no department reports this afternoon, but I do believe we have a short-term vacation rental conversation that we need to cover. So whoever would like to start with that, I would like to advise that the extension for that has been requested to be put on for the 13th. That was mentioned in the ad hoc meetings. And the reason for that is because the day of the moratorium we meet the following day. So there is a time issue with our holiday schedule, which is why the administration was asking for that to be placed on the 13th. Councilman Henderson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one, I guess if we need a 30-day extension on that, I guess that might be appropriate in the fact that we have bumped up against our deadline running out, and we really haven't come up with a good solution. I will say this. I have been talking with the city attorney about drafting an amendment to our current ordinance that would address, number one, density, and what I've talked with the city attorney about is placing a density cap as a percentage in the overlay to housing stock. Also placing a buffer zone that will, of some determination, which I thought maybe next week I would have something more definite, that would create an administrative hearing officer so that we can begin to judge how enforcement is going to work. Because what I heard from this council, whenever the ordinance was presented, that they really wanted a track record to see. So I think the only way we're going to create a track record is if we put this back on the books with an administrative hearing officer. It also, I've asked the city attorney to, in the amendment, to create a 7-member board to hear cases that would come normally to this city council, so that we can begin appointing a committee to hear those cases as well. Mr. Attorney, do you remember anything else that I directed you to address in this that I'm leaving out?
Specifically, the density cap and buffer from R1 is what you were referencing, I believe, before.
Yeah.
Differences within an R3 zone on there as well.
Yeah.
And then the AHO and the 7-member board. Those were the items at least I had marked
Okay.
down.
So those are the things that I would like to present to this council as an alternative to the ordinance or the amendment that was presented earlier, so that we can begin building a track record. It keeps the overlay intact. From what I heard from several council people, they still did not want it in their districts at this point, at least in time, until we, I guess, have proven that we can enforce this. And I want to be respectful of that. I want to be respectful of those council people that say that their district does not want it in their district. We've operated within the overlay, and while it may not have been perfect, and sometimes perfect becomes the enemy of what's better. And I don't want the perfect to get in the way of better. I do want this ordinance to be better. I think it can be better. And so I think, Mr. Attorney, you said you could have that to me next week and maybe into the hands of this council to be taken a look at, hopefully before Christmas, so that we could consider this after Christmas as well. And so that we can begin establishing a track record. We'll keep the overlay as it is currently and create administrative hearing officer. I think we probably do need to raise the initial application fee for the non-owner occupied, maybe perhaps even the renewal fee, to kind of help pay for some of the costs that we will occur from this. So I do want to bring that to your attention. Personally, I was just told just a few minutes ago that maybe there's going to be a request for a 6-month deferral. I think we can do better than that. I mean, we've told the public we needed to put a halt on it until we could come up with something better. And we asked them to give us to the end of the year. I think we need to make good on that promise. But Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask a real quick question on how we proceed linear. So are you going to propose legislation to be put into legislative committee?
Yes, I
Okay.
mean, we can run it through legislative committee.
Yeah, I
That's,
feel-
and that's the reason I'm saying we
Yes.
may need a 30-day to give everybody the time to look at this and maybe make some tweaks to it.
Sure. I want to adhere to the policy as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. But I
Council's
want to
lead.
have it in everybody's hands by next week, and then we can place
sir.
it in legislative committee and then address it when we get back.
Understood. My next question is, in the creation of the AHO, which I feel is a very critical part of enforcement moving forward for not just short-term vacation rentals, but are you tying in the AHO into your legislation specifically and only related to short-term vacation rentals? Or are we creating an AHO as a standalone entity outside of that to possibly address other deficiencies?
Well, I think we
might
already
find?
have established an AHO that could address some of the housing that we talked about earlier. We have that in place, that legislation in place. This legislation, the AHO that I'm talking about, would specifically be in the short-term vacation rental ordinance.
Okay.
So that we can address any punitive consequences through an AHO instead of city court.
Okay, I think I understand you better now. The AHO is specifically tied to short-term vacation rentals.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that was a little bit of complexity there. So I think we understand it now. Madam Vice Chair, see your light.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much, Councilman Henderson, for that. And I do agree with showing, there has to be proof in the pudding. We need to show people that we can enforce and that we are serious about ensuring that our community stay intact. And so I'm 100% for the administrative hearing officer. Also, I love the 7-member board and density cap and all those things. And I believe the moratorium ends January the 9th.
Yes.
Okay. And so January the 9th. And so I believe there was a request from the administration to extend it 6 months. So if Mr. Anderson can come up and give an explanation of that request, and then what would that entail, the 6 months entail?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The administration agrees with Councilman Henderson on most of those points. We know that we've got to have a track record of enforcement. And the reason we know that is I've met with each of you individually and talked about this. And the consensus that I heard from almost all of you was that you wanted to see a few months of enforcement before you would agree to any new rules. Therefore, based on that feedback that we received from you, the city attorney has advised that we can have an AHO up and operational by March, which is still 3 months from now. And that would give us 90 days of enforcement track record if we had a 6-month extension. If we have it to your satisfaction before that 6 months is up, we're fine to move ahead. But there literally is no way for a 30-day extension to show a track record, or we would be asking for that. Our hope is that we can show you how the AHO functions. You can see multiple cases of it. You can see the difference in the AHO and city court, and then can decide on what the new rules are going to be based on the wishes of the council at that time. But because the moratorium now ends the day before the first meeting of next year after the holiday break, 6 months is kind of where we landed on showing you the enforcement that you've requested.
Okay, just so I'm clear, so the administrative hearing officer, we would not be able to have them staffed until around March. And then from that, we would want 90 days of enforcement, which would be the additional 3 months to show that we've, whether this was a good idea or not, whether it worked or not. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that there was some clarity on the request from the administration as well. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And if we don't have something passed prior to the end of the year, the moratorium will, which means it has to be voted on first read next week. The moratorium will expire and we will be inundated with new applications on January 10th without a new system in place.
Okay. And we don't want to do that because then it would seem like the months were just a waste.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure there was some clarity on what the 6-month extension would entail. And I appreciate that. Did you have anything else, Mr. Anderson?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, stand by. I have a couple of lights that may need your response. Councilman Henderson?
I'm not sure why the request didn't come through the chair of the ad hoc committee. I want you to understand this is really the first I'm hearing of it. And I had discussed with you prior to this that you would present your legislation, I would present legislation as a backup in the event that that other legislation didn't pass. And now I'm learning you want a 6-month extension. I've got a problem with that. That's the reason I'm asking this council if they would consider a 30-day so that we can amend our current ordinance so that we have more than a 3-month track record of enforcement. I'm not sure that we can even get this thing up and off the ground and show a track record in 3 months. I get that I'm going up against administration here, but I'm asking for a 30-day extension for the consideration of this amendment so that we can prove a longer track record of enforcement before we take it citywide. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dr. Burrs?
Thank you. I think it's important that we have the track record, and where I'm a bit confused, Chip, is if we don't have the things in place, we won't have enforcement. So how can it be a longer track record?
The amendment that I will present to the council will have those things in place. It will create an AHO, it will create a 7-member committee. It will create a density cap to address the affordable housing concern. It will create a buffer to address the change in the neighborhood complexity. So it will address those things. It will create all of those things that would be in the other legislation, but it just continues to operate within the current overlay that we have, so that we can prove what we're doing.
I understand. I think I get it better now.
I do have a follow-up. So knowing this council and the amendment may be perfect in all respects, it takes us a while to get all the wording right and all of that. And I'm just trying to figure out, shouldn't we get all that done before we carte blanche agree to the terms of any extension? I guess what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe I'm missing it, and that's okay. I think we need to get everything cleaned up before we start piling on more work to look at that we haven't even gotten the system to clean up. That's number one. Number two, if we have a 7-person committee to look at this, are you talking about us? Because one of the things we talked about was getting out of that business because it was so politicized. So it would, a committee that wouldn't be us. I hear you and I get everything you're saying. And I'm at 30,000 feet, not at any of this, because this is, I'm understanding what you're saying. I think I'm more comfortable getting the enforcement all cleaned up before we do anything else, because where we are now, we've been layering things and man, it's created a mess. So I'm not, my friend, I'm not hearing you.
This addresses the enforcement. And without this, I'm not sure how, other than just getting all the illegals not operating. You know, extending the moratorium doesn't create a board. I mean, it doesn't do a lot of these things, so.
Thank you.
That's just a decision we'll have.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hill, I see your light. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Um, This process is an interesting sandwich. The initial resolution to create a moratorium felt like it kind of came out of nowhere and passed very quickly. And at that point, I said, I was uncomfortable and said, we need to give some people some time to get their houses in order. And this body chose to move forward. And since that time, with the creation of the ad hoc committee, I have really respected the intentionality of the work that we have done. The depth of research, the depth of input from our neighborhoods and our business community. There's just been a lot of thoughtful feedback. And in as much as this is the first that you've heard about extending a moratorium today, it's the first that I, as an active member of the committee, have heard about the potential of alternative legislation being brought. My understanding as an active member of the ad hoc committee has always been that that we were counting on the administration to bring us legislation. Now, I'm not opposed at all to us taking the baton, but I do want us to proceed with as much thoughtfulness as we have thus far moved forward. And, with the proposed ordinance that came from the administration, there was an intent to have 2 additional community input sessions to talk about the nuances of that request. Given the fact that the moratorium is scheduled to end in early January, I am deeply concerned about suddenly sandwiching this with a flurry of activity that potentially isn't fully vetted. So I feel like we went into it that way. I don't want to finish it that way. I'd like us to finish this with as much depth of thought as we have behaved as the ad hoc community. It's important to me that the work and the time that we've all put into it, and every member of the ad hoc committee has put a great deal of time into this. And we've had a lot of community members and business owners who have also invested a great deal of time, that be honored in good faith. And I am certainly in favor of going ahead and making some changes to the ordinance to cover to establish the administrative hearing officer and to cover the cost of the enforcement work that we need to do. But it does concern me that it will all have felt a little bit flippant to have had a moratorium and then without a solid answer lift it, because I do think that Chris has a good point about a flood of applications when, you, Councilman Henderson, and Councilwoman Dotley, I think Councilwoman, no, we're all very vocal about the fact that we've got to get a hold of this. We can't let these horses run wild. And I fear that that's really right where we would be, not having seen the proposed legislation, but a density cap in the overlay, a buffer from R1. I have a lot of questions about what that means. And with the density suggestion that was brought to me by administration, I had a million alarm bells going off. I didn't like it when I started thinking about 25% of my multifamily housing could be short-term vacation rental, and that suggestion, the numbers don't work for my district, right? And there's a lot to be thought through here, and I want to make sure that we take the time. So I'm very open to considering how long that should be extended so that we can do the work of the people well and in a thoughtful way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Phil, can you help us out a little bit? Because I feel like we're talking almost about 2 different things.
Yes, sir.
legislation coming from Councilman Henderson. And I would like to note, the chair would really prefer to see a recommendation come from the ad hoc committee on a time frame. I think that would be appropriate. So I do note your objection, sir, and I appreciate that, and because I respect the work that you all have done. But let's separate this into two different items. One, Phil, will you address a little bit for me on the time frame of the moratorium, separate from the legislation proposal from Councilman Henderson?
Yes, sir. The ordinance that established the moratorium here was back in April of 2022. At that point in time, it was an amendment that was added to Chapter 11 of the city code. So we can't do this just by resolution. It has to be done by an ordinance amendment. And the moratorium at least provided that there would be I guess, a moratorium beginning in April of 2022 up to January the 9th of 2023, which unfortunately happens to be a Monday, not your Tuesday, which you would normally adopt. So the recommendation for a moratorium needs to be done before the end of that term to extend it for some length of time in order to be able to have this accomplished and hopefully resolved by adoption of the council by a new ordinance. Otherwise, the moratorium expires on a Monday before you meet, and you need to have that done. So that's the reason I believe that there was a request for 6 months. Doesn't have to be for the entire time of the 6 months, because the current ordinance says up to and including the date, and it can be done before then if you get that time.
So what we're talking about in that request is fulfilling what council members had submitted to the committee, which was, we would love to see the AHO created. We would love to see a track record. And I believe Councilman Henderson has alluded to that in his statements. I still feel that is, yes, I think we need to see that. How that happens if we unpause the button and go back to normal business, I don't know how that's going to, I don't know how that's going to help us. So what I would like to ask is for the committee members to talk with the administration and figure out something of a bit of a compromise or language that ensures that we move quickly as possible, but also fulfilling what council had said in the by way of seeing a track record of enforcement and getting this AHO in place soon, very soon. And I appreciate you pushing on that, Councilman Henderson, 100%, because I think that is the critical part of how we move forward. And we owe that to everybody who has a vested interest in this. That's my recommendation. I have no other lights on this issue. So if there's any other comments, does the administration like to say anything else? Okay.
Chairman, we're flexible in the amount of time the moratorium the council wants. I will say that in my talks with this body individually, as I do on a regular basis, in a way that I understand that you cannot do with each other, the 6-month figure that did not come from me or the mayor. That came from what this council told me you expected in terms of a track record of enforcement. And in order to get 3 months of that, we determined that 6 months of moratorium would be needed. If this council passes a 30-day moratorium, then we'll revisit it after 30 days. But we have to prepare a budget amendment that reallocates funds to hire 3 new inspectors to do what you've told me you want, in addition to getting the AHO up and running. And that will not happen in 30 days.
Let me ask you this question, then I'll go to Councilman Smith. Is the searching for an AHO part of your time frame?
I would defer to the attorney on that, because that's a council-led process advised by the attorney. We don't play a role in the selection of the AHO, but I don't believe the selection would take more than a week, and that can probably happen concurrently with other things.
Okay. And the reason
Getting the inspectors on board and going out and actually citing people at their locations,
that's time consuming.
much more so than just hiring a lawyer to be the part-time AHO.
Sure, and I recognize that. I think the AHO is probably going to be the easier part, as I know applicants have already started to pour in for that
Yes.
position. So, all right, thank you. Councilman Smith, I see your light, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just trying to clarify this, regardless of whether it's 30 days or 6 months, was a date set as to when we are going to see that item to vote on it?
The
If-
date requested by the administration, which is why I would really like a little further, was to have this on the agenda for the 13th of December.
My understanding is we have no choice because I believe we only have 2 more council meetings before it expires and it's an ordinance. So it
That was-
has to go on next week.
That is the reason for the request, sir. Yes.
So have we decided what is going on? Are we going to see one for 30 days? Are we going to see one for 6 months? Are we picking and choosing? Has that determination been made?
That determination has not been made, but I'm hearing there's a willingness to converse and maybe come to a agreement as far as language or addressing time based on the conversation that's been had here in this meeting.
So we will see something on the 13th to extend the moratorium.
You are correct, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hit your light, Dr. Burrs, and you have the floor, ma'am.
So I think Councilman Smith is right. Is this sufficient notice? Don't we have to have 2 weeks' notice?
The chair is adding this item to the agenda.
It's what, but I think,
We
which
will-
item? That it's 30 days or it's
addressing the
60 days or-
moratorium. Yeah. We're going to figure that out, Dr. Burrs.
Okay, so no
Yeah.
one really got it.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Yeah,
Um,
we have to add this item because of our
I think
holiday
when you
schedule.
add, so I think we should add it. That's not a problem
Yeah.
at all. But when you add an item,
Yeah.
it has to be with specificity.
Councilman
No, I-
Smith is correct. We really don't have a choice with our holiday schedule.
I'm agreeing with that. Do we need to decide today whether it's 60 days or 30 days? There has to be private notice. The notice has to say, we're not going to just discuss it. It's an item that's going to be 30 days or don't we need to complete this discussion?
Council, do you would like to discuss this time frame now? Because the ordinance could always be amended from the floor if further conversation.
Want us to do one for 30 days and 6 months, and y'all can choose?
I tell you what,
You can do that.
City Attorney, I appreciate your advice. Do an alternate version for 30 days
Yes.
and one for 6 months, and there's always the option to amend it from the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's the democratic process. All right. Where did we leave off? I believe we are moving into, Madam Chair, are you ready for planning and zoning? Because I think it might be also very exciting. So why don't you take the dais here and
Doesn't seem like a very exciting one to me.
All right, I call the Planning and Zoning Committee to order. Can I get a motion on the minutes, please? Thank you. Okay, everybody, you had a matrix provided to you in your notes that is highlighted. We had 3 cases that have opposition, and Karen will present. Actually, before I get too far into that, do we have any statements from Dan or anything today? Okay. So we had 3 cases with opposition that are highlighted in your packet that Karen is most certainly going to go over. But then we also have a note, Karen, that we'd like to also have a presentation on item K, which is case 2022-0199, and item L, case 2022-0240. Actually, Councilwoman Burrs, did you want a 0199 presentation? You didn't. You're just possibly going to delay that one.
The chair suggested at that time, I asked the city attorney what the proper procedure would be.
Okay, well, so we'll get to that one then when we'll go through the list. How about
Yeah.
that? And actually, Karen, case E 0238 that's in District 2, we don't need a presentation on that. I'm good.
I'm sorry, 238?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so does anyone have any other case that you'd like to see a presentation on? All right, item I, please, 0209, Karen. Okay, any others?
0213, Madam Chair.
Okay, that one is, okay, that's item F. So I'm looking at our highlighted, so we have some crazy agendas happening right now. I'm looking at the document that you all were provided. Will you hold that up, Rakita? This document that is highlighted that you were provided in your packet, that's what we're using for our case numbers. The agenda for next week, the numbers got bumped because we had some items that were missing from the agenda, so it's a little confusing. So I am looking at the Planning and Zoning Committee staff notes document. So we have case number 0213, Chairman Ledford, that we will be going over also. Is that good?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. Take it away, Karen.
Okay, and I had updated the presentation when I saw that the agenda items had changed. So I will start, but please feel free to correct me if I'm missing something. We have 12 zoning cases. They all come with some form of approval. 3 cases had opposition. One we're not going to cover based on the chairwoman's guidance. The first case, Spears Avenue, also I'm not going to go into great detail. It is for a R1 to RTZ, 0 lot line. The person intends on building single-family detached residential units. The opposition was mostly concerned about having townhomes. They saw that sign that said RTZ, residential townhouse, 0 lot line. So I think the opposition, there was not opposition once they're aware is single-family detached, but I just wanted to bring that up as someone did come and speak at Planning Commission. But in this case, the applicant is essentially rezoning to be able to subdivide that lot into 2 lots. So new lots created would be about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. And it had support from both staff and Planning Commission with a condition to single family detached only. And that was conveyed to the person there in opposition. The next case is H. Again, I'm referring to the agenda. I think it's 130, the latest one I saw. And I apologize, so I'll go by case number. This is the one we're skipping based on the guidance, okay? Case 2022-213 is on Shallowford Road. This was the last of the cases that had people in opposition at Planning Commission. This is a request to rezone from R1 to R4 special zone, 7725 Shallowford Road. The site is just west of Grace Baptist Church on Shallowford Road, which is at the intersection of Jenkins and Shallowford. There was a church previously on the site that I believe was impacted heavily by the tornado, and that building has since been removed. The request is to rezone from R1 to R4 to develop 5 20-unit apartment buildings and accessory apartment-type uses. So there's a bit of mix of zoning in the area. The site is zoned R1, shown in the yellow. The adjacent campus to the east, which is that larger property at the northwest intersection of Jenkins and Shallowford, is the Grace Baptist site. There is a R4 zone abutting the site to the west with a senior living facility in place on that. The site's less than 5 acres, so those proposed 100 units accounts for a density of 20 dwelling units an acre. The site is located in the Area 11 East Brainerd Plan, which identifies the site as a campus place type. That use primarily includes uses like institutions, offices, research facilities, schools, medical uses, clubhouse, meeting halls, kind of a mix of institutional uses, but also multifamily living. That place type for this site, for the plan, was developed when that church was still in place as part of a larger kind of campus designation with Grace Baptist to the east. The staff recommendation notes that mixed residential place type may be more appropriate here based on that change of use, but the campus place type does mention multifamily living. Excuse me, the development form is a mix of suburban, single-family residential lots, multifamily residential developments, assisted living development, and that larger church campus. The proposed development of multifamily apartments is compatible with the surrounding development form, and staff found that it can be compatible, but that the R3 zone would be a better fit to limit commercial uses along Shallowford Road. Right now, Shallowford Road, the northern portion of Shallowford Road, until you get to the Jenkins intersection, there's not any commercial showing kind of in this section. The R4 zone that was requested does have more commercial uses, so staff was recommending denying the R4 but approving the R3 zone. There was opposition present. This had 2 hearings at Planning Commission, if I'm remembering correctly. Density, the amount of density, that 20 units an acre was a concern. Just concern about just more apartments along this corridor, and flooding, stormwater issues were discussed. Planning Commission found that the multifamily development was compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses and development form, but that the R3 residential zone was the better tool. So this does come with a recommendation to approve the R3 residential zone for this site to enable apartment developments, and it has no conditions.
Thank you, Karen. Councilman Henderson?
So I
may
had
have
my,
missed you before, sorry.
yeah, I had my light pushed for case 0210. Karen, the president of Hill City Neighborhood Association sent a letter to RPA registering an opposition to this case. And I don't know, Emily Wood received, well, I guess she received it. She responded back to Grant. But I just wanted to make sure that that letter was on record when you stated that the gentleman had a opposition to the townhomes, and then he found out, you know, it wasn't town. There is opposition from the Hill City Neighborhood Association.
Okay, thank you. I'll update our records and have that provided should this come up again next week.
Okay.
Is it okay if I back up to this one that
Yeah.
I had my light pushed for?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
All right.
I missed you.
And this is a Spears Avenue case.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is 806 Spears.
Yes.
But I just wanted the council to know that the Hill City Neighborhood Association did hear this case, took a vote on it, and were in opposition. They have stood firm on keeping that area R1, even though they really have no opposition to the smaller lot sizes. And I had tried to address that as well, but I guess we'll just wait till the new zoning codes come in effect, and we'll just continue to deny all these other zoning requests.
Thank you. I apologize for not adding that to the slide, and I'll have that for next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Karen, I really don't know where to start on this one. When the Area 11 plan was being constructed, this was not the consideration of the community input, this particular use, correct?
What the citizens would have shown, or stakeholders in the process would have seen for the plan would have been campus.
Would have been
They would have seen a
campus.
campus, they would understand it was kind of a mix of institutional, churches, school type uses. And they would have seen that kind of as a little center with Grace Baptist property.
Okay, so almost an extension of Grace, if you would.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know that they would have made a distinction there.
Right. So where we're at with this was I attended the community meetings. And from day one, residents were really not against the R3. I think they felt like that was an okay use. But where the conversation tended to land was some of the property that's adjacent to it moving down, at some point, even as little as like 2013, 14, 15 range, was denied by RPA for density less than what was recommended for this. So for example, this is being, if you look at the site, but you don't have a site plan in this slideshow, do you?
I should.
5 buildings, 20 units per acre, which was denied by RPA and settled on, like, for example, Morning Point next door to it, was denied and settled on 8.3. Villages of Ashwood, 5. Ashwood Square, 10. Ashford Villa, 9. And then from what I have been able to unearth, and I need to verify a little bit of this, is some new proposals with 8.7 and 11 not nearby were actually denied. So at that meeting, 20 units per acre was the big contentious point. So we worked with the representative, which I need to note is not the name listed here, which is Paresh Patel. I've never spoken to Paresh Patel. The community's never met Mr. Patel. We're represented by an architecture firm. And those communications kind of dried up. Last time I asked a question was November 22nd regarding density, where we think it should be in line and congruent with what's been happening along that corridor. And I'm not comfortable. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not comfortable with the lack of conditions. I mean, when we look at, I pulled the case from next door, and at that time, RPA put in all kinds of 20-foot landscape buffers, type C landscape buffers to against another property next door to it, an RTZ, and there are no conditions. So we have some serious concerns about this massive amount of density. And although I understand density, and thank you for whoever said District 4 in our strategic planning session, we are no strangers to density. We have our share. We lead the way in density. All around our district, we are very welcoming to density. What my community is asking, and this is the community of Drake Forest, the community of residents, even in the villas, which is down the street, 8.3, is that 20 units per acre is just is a really bad fit. And I'm not comfortable with even having this move forward onto the agenda because of the lack of communication. I have never, again, even spoken to the applicant. And that's very concerning to me. And a recent event, just a few days ago, a real estate sign has gone up in front of the property, which perplexes me additionally. And the agent has responded that they are going for townhomes, offices, and condominiums, which is also perplexing to me because, and then they're actually putting in a price range, which is a for sale item and not the apartments that was proposed. So I really am not comfortable. The community is certainly not comfortable. And I'm going to request that this item not even be placed on the agenda until we could do further research. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Ledford. Okay.
And I'm going to move forward just to make sure I don't miss anything. I'm going to pause, making sure I know which ones are next.
0209, please.
Okay. Okay. This is a request to rezone from R1 to R2 to develop a 2-unit townhouse. It's on Lightfoot Mill Road. This property is zoned R1. You'll just see an R2 strip across Lightfoot Mill, which does allow townhomes. And it's kind of hard to see on this zoning map, but there is manufacturing zone property backing up to that R2 strip. So the applicant's requesting just to develop 2 units on the site. So the density is about 5 units an acre. The Highway 58 plan, which is a 2002 document, so quite aged at this point, recommends low-density residential uses for these properties, including this site, which is intended for detached single-family dwellings, typically with a residential density of 1 to 4 dwelling units an acre. There are primarily single-family detached residential uses in the area. The R2 properties across the street, though zoned R2, are single-family residential detached uses. Staff noted that townhomes can be compatible if the density is similar. There's adequate landscape buffering or massing of the buildings may be limited. However, noted there are no townhomes located in the vicinity of the area. So looking at Lightfoot Mill, you're going to see that development pattern of single-family abutting Lightfoot Mill, and then those large industrial uses just to the east of Lightfoot Mill. So staff had found that the request does not comply with the recommendations of the currently adopted plan, and that zone would introduce much smaller lot sizes and higher density into the predominantly single-family neighborhood. But noted that ADUs might be a possibility and that this request could be reconsidered maybe in the future as we have more updated land use. There was no opposition at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission found the request is compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses, and development form, and has a recommendation to approve. So don't think that staff is not opposed, certainly, to a 2-unit townhome here. There is R2 zoning across the street. It would just be setting a precedent in this area, and the plan just doesn't provide guidance for that.
Karen, I guess, is that the same land that was property that was denied, I think 2 or 3 years ago?
We did.
Okay.
There was this, I think these few properties, and then it went up Bird Avenue. So there might have been a combination of 4 or 5 properties at that time. And the applicant has pulled out this one to develop at this point. So I think if I'm remembering back correctly, Bird Avenue is R1 and single family, has a pretty set pattern of single family detached. And I think that was one of the reasons why we recommended denial. I don't know that it got to council, but yes, this is that area. And I believe this was one of those properties.
Okay, thanks.
This one by itself though is adjacent to the R2 zone, unlike the case previously, which had a combination of properties.
Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Welcome.
All right, case 0199, please. That's right. Sorry, Carol. 0240 we need, please. Oh, you have comments? I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Carol. Clearly, I still have like sick brain here. She does have some comments on 0199. My apologies. Councilwoman Bursch. you're
It's
live.
been a challenging day, I know.
I'm sorry.
So, Phil, back to you again. So, is Mr. Emery here today by any chance? Okay, so we met and they're trying to retool all their plans to meet the suggested requirements of the area. And they're not ready yet. Is it more appropriate to continue to defer or just remove it till they are ready?
I guess it's an issue as to whether they would have to go back through the entire process here with RPA and pay additional fees at that point.
I don't want them to have to do that. I don't mind deferring it ad nauseum, but it's just, who would they pay the fees to if they want to remove it from our agenda till they rethink?
Would not be a simple matter to just table it and then bring it back up at a later time as long as the applicant is agreeable?
Well, I thought if you table something, it has to come back by the next meeting.
Not if you table it to a specific date. You can take. If you want to
So there's
table it
no
on
difference
specific-
between doing that and deferring it to a specific date?
The matter is just removing it from the agenda completely here at this point in time. If you defer it to a specific time, we'll add it to the agenda for that date. So.
All right. Madam Chair, I will be deferring it until the January meeting. Thank you.
Okay, now we're ready for 0240, please, Karen.
Okay, this case is in South Broad. It's a little confusing as it's a rezoning from UGC, Urban General Commercial, with conditions to UGC. So I'm spend a little time talking about why that is happening. The proposed use is a 3-story multifamily development. So if you will bear with me while I explain this. The UGC zone was amended, so it's going from old UGC to new UGC is essentially what's happening. So the rezoning is 1.2 acres with a proposed 63 units. As mentioned, the site's already zoned UGC with conditions, and the property to the south, west, and north is zoned UGC also. The brown zoning to the right is the R3 multifamily zone. So just a reminder, earlier this year, the UGC zone was amended. In part, this was to address the deviation situation at Planning Commission, where we removed that, finding it wasn't compliant with state law. So, excuse me. So this is the current language of the UGC, and you'll note number 3, building mass, that there is no maximum building mass requirements for properties rezoned to UGC after August 30th, 2022, which was the effective date of that zoning ordinance amendment. So prior to this, unless the Planning Commission had granted a deviation, there was a 12,000 square foot maximum. So the property in question had that 12,000 square foot maximum. They would like to have a greater building footprint to that. So they are now rezoning to UGC to be able to take advantage of the building mass, which says there's no maximum building height requirement, no maximum building mass requirement. There is still a maximum building height of 5 stories, although the applicant's only proposing 3 stories. So this was the workaround we determined at the time, and we did this because council had acted on several urban general commercial zonings over time, and there was probably a really good reason why 12,000 square foot or less was part of that rezoning. So in order for anything to be larger, it was determined it would come back through the council process, determine if that was appropriate, because we do have quite a bit of UGC zoning now. So the prior case in this was 2021, so they or before that, kind of the cutoff. And I was just showing you the current case boundary is the bottom property. The prior case contains much of that, that 2021 case. And I'll note that it was limited to residential uses only, a maximum building height of 3 stories. So when council acted on much of the UGC zoning for this site, it was conditioned to residential uses and maximum building height. So this is, excuse me, the 2018 South Broad District study recommends mixed housing, medium intensity, and mixed housing, high intensity for the site. It's kind of a mix splitting through the middle. But generally, it's described as having a mixture of building types and allowing buildings up to 3 stories in height. It really kind of stresses that urban development. The surrounding development form is a mix of large commercial developments, urban single-family dwellings, and institutional lots with associated parking. There are multiple neighborhood UGC zone parcels in the area with conditions related to a variety of residential and building heights. Staff did recommend adding conditions to ensure a similar development form to some of the development in the surrounding area. And just noted that the UGC zone has some form-related development standards which help implement the plan recommendation. There was not opposition at PC. Both staff and PC found the request is compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses, and development form. And it comes with a recommendation to approve UGC subject to the following condition: residential uses only and a maximum height of 3 stories. So very similar to the 2021 recommendation with a change allowing a greater building footprint.
Thank you so much, Karen. For this one, I would like it removed from my agenda until we're able to talk to the developer. Initially, when this was approved, there were a certain amount of units. There was a community meeting and agreement with the Hamlet Chapel Church. In addition to, there was an alleyway abandonment, not accompanied, but that went along with the rezoning. And all of that was based on the agreement between the developer and the community. And so to come back now with this new thing, and I haven't been able to get a meeting scheduled with the developer. I hadn't got a response back yet.
Okay.
And the community is willing to meet. We set a date, and then we were not able to get the developer to respond to that date. So with that, until we're able to get those issues rectified, especially with I believe it's doubled in units almost. I think the original units were like 30 or so.
It's
And
up
now
to
we
63.
Yeah, so now it's up to 63, in addition to the reason why I was rezoned. All that was agreed to in the first place was because of the conditions that were placed on. So now to come back, that creates a huge level of distrust in the community because they agreed to something and now someone is coming back and saying, oh, that's not going to work. Let's do this. Well, no, we're not going to do that. So I would like this removed from the agenda until we're able to get this rectified in the new year with the developer.
Okay. And we're happy if you'd like us to package some information that has all the old zoning case information in
Yes.
this, and I can send that to you as a packet to have, or if you'd like us to make copies, I can put those in interoffice mail to you for your meeting.
Yes, if you could send me the information from the old case, including the alleyway abandonment as well, that would be great.
I will.
Thank you so much.
So will you be making a motion to defer until the January 10th agenda?
I think it's on our 2-week agenda. It's not on the one for tonight.
Okay,
It's on the agenda for the
it's on.
the 13th.
Yes, ma'am, for the 13th.
Yeah, so do I need to make a motion to defer, or can you just move it off?
I'm just trying to make sure if we remove that item from the agenda here and place it back on January the 10th.
I don't foresee that being back on the 10th.
Okay.
I don't foresee
Yeah,
that
this
being
is-
back on
This
in
is just like what
January.
Darren told you.
So yeah, just take it on off. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and Karen, now if we could please discuss the resolution that's on our agenda for tonight, 0265.
And I do have a presentation loaded for that if you needed that.
I think
So-
that would be useful.
This is the special exceptions permit for the late night event facility.
Okay, Councilwoman Bursch just has some questions. Hit your light, Councilwoman. All right.
Yeah, okay. So let me make sure I've got this correct, this information correct. And Phil,
Yes, ma'am.
so for council's edification, a lot of emails have gone back and forth relative to law. So let me make sure I've got this correct on the record. There was a place called the Palm that was before we had created new law relative to nightclubs.
That's correct.
All right. And then we created a law that these places had to be 750 feet from residential areas.
And a
All
lot
right.
of additional, yes,
Yes.
information. Mhm.
Yes. And then when Bar Watson came in, instead of holding Bar Watson to the new law, we somehow grandparented them in under the old law.
That's correct. And I don't have my notes in front of me, but I believe there was just a name change. And the name change did not trigger a need for a special permit. It's the same
So it was just a name
location.
change.
My memory is it's
All
just a
right.
name change.
Okay. Subsequent to that, we created a new law for whatever the reasoning was, and I don't disagree with it, that nightclubs needed to be at least 750 feet from a residential area. So then this place applies, and it's near the old, it's underneath the old Palms Bar Watson.
Right.
And so now if we do a special exceptions for them, we're obviating our own law, except that the law says if council wants to, we can lower the 750. In this case, we'd be lowering it to 200 and something feet. Correct?
265, correct.
Okay. Is that correct, Phil?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so this isn't precedent setting in any way, correct?
Well, it's at least establishing I guess the distance requirement here is acceptable. The council can impose whatever conditions on the special exceptions permit that they feel are necessary to prevent noise or other nuisance issues to adjoining residential properties. And I believe that authority is within the code.
And I believe in your email, you said to me that, but we better have backup complaints and stuff. And I'm not sure how we can have complaints and stuff if it hasn't existed. So all I'm trying to figure out, I'm fine with the recommendation. I'm putting all this on record. So I think some of my colleagues may be challenged as a result of this in their own districts. So your recommendation is that it be approved, but the late hour be only for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
That's correct. And that's what the applicant was requesting, to just limit it to that period.
To Friday, Saturday, and
Yes.
Sunday. And you use Sunday, even though it's a work day, the next day, because that's what the applicant wanted.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so I don't mind, as I told y'all, I don't mind approving that just for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 11 o'clock, other nights. It's just that I'm wondering if it's not precedent setting for other areas, and that was my only concern. So I don't know that we need to discuss it at all. This one isn't tough because it's underneath an already existing bar. I don't have any problem with it. But I'm thinking about Brainerd Road, and I'm thinking about East Brainerd Road, and I'm thinking about Hickson Pike, and just thinking about places that we may want to do some thinking about. But I'm going to move to approve, but I just wanted to make y'all aware of this because I've had some serious thoughts about that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
May I address perhaps the precedent setting, because that was something that's come up in we did look at, there are 2 other cases that council's approved for special exception permit similar to this, where there were properties within that 750-foot buffer. So there was other action. I just pulled them and looked at them. One of them, I think, was 61 feet. I can pull my email and take a look at that. But I'm not remembering the location. I just was looking for has council had approved a permit where there was a reduction in the buffer, and there were at least 2 examples, and I didn't look further than that. And the second, I'll note that there is an adjacent residential zone 260 feet, 5 feet away, but it is vacant. And staff went out there a couple weeks ago to double check it is vacant. It's completely surrounded by commercial zoning and commercial uses. So I think staff might have looked at that differently if that residential zone had a residential use.
Right. It wasn't that so much as a precedent setting. And if you could at least let my colleagues know when there was a reduction, has that
will.
site caused any problems? I'm going to move to approve it, but I
Okay.
just think it's something we may need to think about as Chattanooga is getting more dense and busy with bars and stuff?
We will, we'll check all of the permits that have been issued and see if there's been a reduction, just so we have that for future reference
Thank
too.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if we could go back to M on the planning on the zoning for District 8,
What's the case number?
2022-0236.
We can, I'm sorry, I'm getting there now, yeah.
I don't actually need a presentation.
Okay, yes.
Karen, first of all, is there anyone here, anyone with the developer that's here? Nope. Okay, so I haven't spoke with the developer or anyone connected with the developer. So I'm going to ask that this be deferred until I am able to have a conversation.
Okay, so that will be on the agenda for next week, and you
Okay.
can make a motion to defer it at that point.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Okay, we have covered all of our topics for today in a somewhat bumpy fashion. Thank you for your grace, Council. Karen, I appreciate your help with all of this. I see no other lights, so I will adjourn us to 5. 6. Goodness. I'm glad y'all have worked with me before.
I'm confused. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing this correctly.
0213.
That's what I thought. Items L, N, and O is what I
Yeah,
have.
you better stick with the case numbers
Yeah, okay.
because, because I'm getting 2 different numbers.
And we said no changes to any of that. We're going to go forward as proposed.
Okay,
So HVAC did not get what they wanted on that.
okay.
What they did